All right, today we're going to do our Bible story. You've heard this before, but I wanted you to be able to remember it so that when we get to the second part, you will have remembered the first part of the story. And this is the story of Naaman and the servant girl. So, remember that a young girl was once taken away from her home in the country of Israel, and she was made to be a servant in the home of a man named Naaman who lived in another land. Naaman was an important man. He was the captain for the armies of the king of Syria. And that's really important to remember. Naaman worked for the king of Syria, but the little girl was from Israel, and we're going to talk about the king of Israel too in the next part of the story. And so the young girl became a servant to Naaman's wife, and every day the girl did the jobs she should do because she was obedient. Okay? And as the little girl worked, she heard that Naaman, the girl's master, had a terrible sickness. Do you remember what that sickness was called? Leprosy. That's right, leprosy. And remember, that's where you get all those terrible sores all over your body. And there was no cure for leprosy. But the little servant girl knew that the only one who could make Naaman well was her God, the true and living God of Israel. And that's the same God that we worship. Remember, the other people, like in Syria, they had other idols that they worshiped. They didn't really worship the true and living God. And she had learned about God and about how powerful He is. She believed that God can do anything. She also knew about a man of God named, do you remember his name? Elisha, and he lived in Israel. God had given Elisha power to do many things other people could not do. God could give Elisha the power to make Naaman's leprosy go away. There was hope for Naaman. But what should the little girl do? If someone had been unkind to you, like Naaman was to the servant girl, he had taken her from her country and her family, would you be a little upset? Maybe you'd be a lot upset and you'd be angry. What would you do? Would you tell Naaman or his wife about Elisha and God's power to heal him? Or would you keep it quiet and think, well, Naaman gets what he deserves for taking me from my family? What do you think? You got it. She obeyed God, and she went to Naaman's wife and told her about Elisha and about her God and how God had given Elisha the power to heal. Well, someone heard what the little girl said and told the king of Syria what Naaman needed to do was to be made well if he went to see the king of Israel. Is that what Naaman was supposed to do? Go see the king of Israel? No, he was supposed to go see Elisha. He had heard her wrong, and she said Elisha could help him get well, not the king. Well, meanwhile, the king of Syria, he wrote a letter to the king of Israel and asking him to heal Naaman. Oh my. So Naaman is on his way to see the king of Israel. And the king of Israel writes back and says, am I God that I could heal Naaman? I can't heal Naaman. Only God could do that. Only God could heal Naaman of his leprosy. So in the next video, we'll see what Naaman is going to do. He's kind of stuck in the middle in his chariot. Which way should he go? It's always good to think about which way should we go. Should we go God's way and do what God has said, the right thing? Or should we listen to a whole bunch of different people who say things that are not true? Okay, find out in the next part of their story.